Hey everyone. Today I want to talk about the most common thing that dog owners mention to me, which is my dog listens perfectly inside the house. When it comes to outside, it's an entirely different story. The dog is extremely stubborn. I'm going to tell you right away, your dog is probably not stubborn. It's just too hard for your dog. The environment is too difficult at the moment. Okay, so this applies for puppies, adolescent dogs, leash reactivity, recall. So we're going to be kind of touching a little bit of everything today in the context of what you might be going through. So distraction, too excited, stress, like all of these things are typically in every category of dog, so to speak. I'll hear things like, "My dog knows sit, but won't do it outside. My dog won't come when called outside. My dog pulls the whole walk. My dog barks and lunges at dogs. My dog ignores treats outside. He's not food motivated. My dog is too excited to listen. My dog, of course, once again, is stubborn." Most owners, they look at this like disrespect, like defiance, like, my kid isn't listening to me, my kid knows better, kind of thing. But usually it's a training problem. It's not really an attitude problem. I think that's something that we need to kind of repeat to ourselves, that a lot of the times this is not an attitude issue. We're not looking at a dog who's saying, "Screw you, I'm not going to listen," kind of thing. It just becomes a lot more deep than you think in that context. It's not as simple as, my dog is doing this on purpose, so to speak. Dogs, they don't generalize well. So dogs are not great at like automatically transferring a skill from one environment to the next. So you might have an incredible recall in your backyard, maybe not, but you might, and you're wondering, why isn't this working when it comes to in the dog park, so to speak. Sit in the kitchen is easy, right? Sit at the front door could be harder than sit in the kitchen. Sit in the driveway is harder. Sit on the sidewalk is harder. Sit while another dog passes is harder. Sit at the park with squirrels, kids, bikes, smells. All of these things enhance and increase the difficulty of even the simple sit, right? If your dog only listens in the kitchen, your dog is kitchen trained, but it doesn't mean that your dog is has generalized that training in all other circumstances. And this is why exposure is so important. You don't have an obedience problem, you have a generalization problem. That's what we need to remember. This isn't an obedience problem. This is the fact that my dog is not used to doing it in these type of environments. And remember, like, since we're on the topic of obviously being outside, it's not just outside, right? You have smells, again, dogs, people, cars, bikes, noises, garbage, other animals, movement, which could be a leaf. How many times have you, for all those new puppy owners, where we've gone outside with our puppy to do pee pee, and when we're outside, a leaf goes by, or even a fly goes right by them. They get interested in the fly and they completely forget about peeing. Then they come in your house and they say, "Oh, yeah." And then they pee, right? So everything is a new distraction for them when they're outside until it becomes super normalized. And when that is, well, then you start seeing the generalization of obedience making more sense, so to speak. Like, again, let's talk about how puppies focus. Okay, since we're on the topic of puppies, how do they process the world? So everything, remember, if your puppy, let's just off the bat, let's say your puppy is 3 months old. That means that 3 months ago that dog didn't exist. I think everyone realizes that, right? That's pretty obvious. But I don't know, for me, I kind of sit there and dwell with that for a second. 3 months ago, I see a car drive by, and for me, I've been on the earth now for 41 years, right? So it's quite normalized for me, right? I'm not freaking out because I see a car, or because of the sky, of how beautiful the sky looks, or the smells, walking into nature, or when you go camping and that awesome smell, right? But for puppies, all of these things are so absolutely so interesting. I think we take it for granted to a degree. And puppies, kind of like kids in a way, they make us enjoy those things all over again and realize, like, wow, like, look how excited they are out of something that we would just be like, "Oh yeah, it's just another day," right? So, when we're walking on leash with our puppy, this is why heel only really comes later on. We try to do the bare minimum basics. At least that's how I do it. I try to do the bare minimum basics with my puppy. Doesn't mean that it's a free for all, but what it means is that I'm focusing more on exposure and socialization than I actually am obedience at that stage. Of course, there's a little bit of obedience there, but my expectation of getting my 3-month-old puppy to sit in front of, I don't know, a park full of kids and be calm and do nothing is asking for a lot, right? Compared to letting my puppy see the kids, maybe trying to talk to my puppy, see if I can get my puppy's attention, rewarding that, even just letting my puppy watch, regardless of how tight the lead is, and just letting my puppy see that this is a normal occurrence. This happens all the time. That it becomes, again, more generalized. So even though I might focus a little bit on red light, green light, let's say, I'm not full blown in obedience mode when I'm dealing with a puppy. It's all about exposure. So important and very overrated, actually. Another thing, too, when it comes to they're not, I find that people think that puppies are just kind of supposed to know these things. Or like it's normal for them to, they see cars all the time, Josh. They shouldn't be doing this. It's like all the time. What's all the time to you, right? And the dog's been here for 3 months. That's not a lot of time at all, right? Another complaint I'll get, which I understand. I want you to understand. I want you to know that I understand that these are scenarios that are not easy. But I'll give you another one. My puppy will stop every 5 seconds and just watch, and it's, I need to get to work. I need to do things. Totally, I totally get that. But sitting there and watching, it's because it's so interesting to them, right? And I know we won't always have time to do it, but when we do, let them watch. Let them just understand and see and hear and feel because it is very important. So if I happen to have the time, I am trying my best to allow them to just kind of take that all in. Okay? Very important. Remember this, a puppy that won't listen outside is not giving you a hard time. The puppy is trying to process a world that is way bigger than your living room. Okay? I think that's something to keep in the back of your mind. This is why I will see puppies who will want to run back in the house, who don't want to leave the house. And when you are outside, they're always trying to beeline back to get into the house. And that's because the world outside is scary at the beginning for them. For some, not all, but for some. It's a process. It takes time for them to understand that. Let's look at adolescent dogs outside. Talk about the teenage phase, let's say. Teenage phase, it depends, but the time frame where I notice a lot of issues, besides the teething phase, right? I find that there's a lot of talk about stubbornness and my dog isn't listening and oh, my dog is biting me again and trying to get attention and XYZ, usually around 10, in between 10 months and 15 months. This is where I see a lot of stuff like he used to listen, he knows better, he's testing me, he's being dominant. I would say that the dog's needs retraining from a harder development stage. Your adolescent dog didn't forget the training, the difficulty level changed. What that means is that they're thinking to a different degree. There's more action. You're giving them more access. And so, of course, they're awake more, by the way. They're in their prime, so to speak. Energy can be high. So you're seeing a lot more stages kind of coming together around that age, 10 to 15 months or so. So it's very normal that there's a little bit of what we call regression, I guess. It looks like regression, but really it's just because now we're adding in more stuff. There's more things going on. They're noticing more. They're questioning more. But again, it doesn't come from a place of like, he's doing this on purpose kind of thing. Like he knows better. He knows he's not supposed to do that. It's not so black and white kind of thing. Let's look at the scenario too when people say he's being dominant or she's being dominant. I hear this one very often. I think everyone's definition of dominant is a little wishy washy. This is what I think most people mean when they say dominant. This is not what dominance means. But I think when people say he's being dominant or she's being dominant, what they're really saying is that my dog isn't listening. My dog is being stubborn. My dog is, I think that they have they have made dominant that word basically. That word means my dog is trouble. I need to show him who's boss. I need to show my kid that I'm in charge. I think that that's where a lot of people are kind of going with that word dominance. So I'm not going to get into that. That's not what the session is for, about what it actually means. What I will say, though, is that dominance and my dog being stubborn or my dog not listening are two entirely different things. So, again, going back to what most people think it means, stubbornness, my dog isn't listening. Again, it comes back down to environment. It comes back down to, are you giving too much access? There's a lot more to it than just that, but these are some of the big reasons as to why these shifts as the dog ages. And as a parent, I'd say that same thing with my kids. We have stages, right? Where things kind of change as they're getting more social. They learn different things from different people, and then they ask us, and then they learn things, and then they try to act like whatever they learned, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But there's a lot of those type of things that happen as well. Reactivity outside, let's get into that a little bit. I do leash reactivity classes in the Montreal area. These classes are quite popular. I started them, my gosh, I feel like I've been saying I started it 6, 7 years ago. I feel like I've been saying that for like 15 years. So it's been a while. It's been a while. I know for a fact that, especially in the Montreal area, at least group wise, I was probably one of the first to start the group classes outside. I think the reason why I was one of the first is because I think it's really tough. It's really difficult when you're dealing with a group of dogs that are reactive. Then you add in the factor that you are outside, you are in the public eye. I think it can be challenging. I've seen many dog trainers now that do the group classes outside for the leash reactivity, which is awesome. Love to see it. I think if your dog is capable of being in a class like that, you should really look into it, wherever that is, whoever, whatever dog trainer that might be. I think it would be very wise. I would just say that make sure whatever position or trainer you go to, that there is some form of positive reinforcement involved in what's happening. Because at the end of the day, we need to get the dog to associate positive scenarios with their behaviors, and shouldn't just be nonstop correction. Our kids don't learn like that. Our dogs, it's been proven many times that our dogs don't learn like that either. Okay, this is why it's so important that we're implementing those positives when, of course, we can have those positives. Again, this is from someone who was a balance trainer, an alpha role trainer, whatever you want to call it, back in the day. I did use aversive methods, and being who I am now and what I use and how I do it, being positive reinforcement, I can assure you that the whole scenario of you can't teach certain dogs with just positive reinforcement is not true. I think that I don't want to get on a tangent here, but we are talking about reactivity. There's extremists in every culture, training style, all of it. There's always the extremists. And I think that a part that's a little miscommunicative is that positive reinforcement means that we don't say no to our dogs. And that's not true. Okay. We absolutely say no. We need to make sure our dog understands no. That doesn't mean that you're aversive. Okay. That doesn't mean that you're mean. Okay. It's about how and what you do when you say no. It's about tone, right? And positive reinforcement is also about tone. And so let me give you an idea of a correction. If my dog is reactive towards another dog, my first form of correction is going to be turning around and walking the other way. not to fix the problem. This does nothing to fix the problem, but this is a correction. I am correcting my dog by removing access or lowering the, or I should say, expanding the threshold of the distance, hence a correction. This is not okay. And so while I'm walking back, I'm basically saying, no, this is not okay. Let's go. We're going over here. It's the tone. Okay. And then we work on the other scenarios. I'm not going to get into all the details, but that's just to give you an example of what I mean by a correction, at least my example, right? How I do my work. So having said that, there are trainers that would say that that is aversive. This is where I'm kind of going with it, right? Is that that's perfectly fine if they think it's aversive. I totally understand it because you can always go a notch lower, right? We were just talking about environment. This is why I'm trying to connect all of it together. The answer would be don't go on walks, don't go in areas where you might run into a dog, because that will be a lower threshold, and therefore you can work on behaviors differently to build up to the point where the dog is non reactive. I understand all of that, but it's also not necessarily real life. So we have to add real life into context. That doesn't mean that you need to be aversive, but it means that things happen and you're not always going to be on point, so to speak. And there is going to be periods where you have to push, not aversive push, but like push. Like my son is having a hard time. My son doesn't think he can do this. My son is or my daughter are nervous about doing XYZ and I push. I'm a parent. I push. That doesn't mean I kick them into the pool, right? But that's what I'm trying to say. All right. Without going too much on a tangent, I feel like I already did, but I think it's important to understand a little bit of my mindset behind that too. And I always talk about what I do, but I don't necessarily always talk about the mindset behind why I do it. So yeah. Another thing, oh yes, yes, yes. Another thing we wanted to get into is just let's talk about the ladder of difficulty since we're on that topic, like the reactivity and stuff like that. Let's look at a simple progression of difficulty. All right. So let's say we're teaching, I don't know, let's just keep it simple, but you can apply this to everything, including reactivity to dogs. All right. For the extremists who want more of a slower path. Okay. Example. Let's teach sit. Let's keep it simple. So we have inside the house, then we have near the front door, then we have the door open, maybe then on the porch, then on the driveway, on a quiet street, mild distractions, maybe something around more movement, then closer over time. You don't jump from the kitchen in the sit in the kitchen to trying to get your dog to sit in the dog park, right? That's too big of a jump. And don't get me wrong, I already know what some of you are going to say, and you are proud, and I'm happy about that. You'll say, no, 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 my dog does it. Phenomenal. Okay. That's amazing. That's what we want. Right. But I would definitely say that to a degree, you didn't just go from kitchen sit to dog park sit. There was lots of repetitions. You probably tried it on your walks without maybe even realizing it, trying to get them to stop at corners before you cross the street. A little kid wants to say hi and you're trying to get your dog to sit first. There's so many little variables that get the dog to where we want them to be, right? But you can't expect perfect high level obedience in the dog park when the level of obedience in the kitchen is mediocre. You have to build. All right. Anything nowadays, everyone wants now, right? They want it right this second. And it makes it challenging. It makes it very challenging. Remember, too, I think a big one that is super underrated is just rewarding check ins. I don't know how many people tell me my dog doesn't look at me at all when we go on a walk. Stop walking. Just stop. Stand there. It might be the longest 5 minutes of your life, okay? But the moment your dog finally looks back and says, like, hey, like, what's happening here? And they give you that look, Yes, good job. You can reward that and you can move on. Rewarding check-ins are so important in these type of contexts. Reward them for looking at you. Reward them for even turning their back to look at you. You know, they're not necessarily looking in your eyes, but they turned around facing you. Hey, I'll reward that. Why not? Right? Walking near you, responding to their name, disengaging from a smell, not reacting to a dog. How many people, I'm curious about this, okay? Please write to me. I want to know. I want to know what you're thinking. How many of you don't have a reactivity problem? And when your dog does see another dog, let's say from a distance, you're not going to say hi, and your dog is just watching, how often do you let them know that was a good decision? I bet you it's not as high as I would like it to be. Do not underestimate that scenario. Reward your dog. It can be verbal. It does not have to be a cookie every time. It could be affection. It could be whatever, but let them know that was a great decision. Most people will only reward after a correction. So I'll walk by a dog. Oh, well, my dog didn't react. Cool. But I don't say anything. I don't pet. I do nothing. Then my dog reacts. So my dog's lunging. Hey, hey, I'm trying to get control. Finally, I get control. And then maybe even not, but some people won't. But some people will then give the affection. And so it's funny to me because people have been conditioned to think that I only reward when they do, after they do the bad thing. So I show them the bad thing. That's not okay. And then I reward the good thing. But that is not the like all she wrote kind of thing. You can absolutely reward your dog if they made the decision from the get go to not do it. And I think the only time people do that is when they have a problem. When things are good, they'll typically take it for granted. They won't reward their dog at all in these contexts. I think that is a very big missed opportunity, especially because a lot of the times these behaviors don't show up right away. They come later on, whether it's frustration, overstimulation, so on and so forth. Your dog got attacked. You want to make sure that you are being proactive in a lot of these contexts. When you are already in problem territory, you need to have something high value with you because you're just not enough in many of these contexts. It depends on the breed, it depends on their personality, and all of these things kind of play a role in what you may or may not achieve based off of how reactive they are. So having something of high value, letting them know, just making sure that they know that you are such high value. Is you think you're high value, but in the reality, you become the fun police, you become mom and dad, meaning you're not as exciting as Uncle Johnny, right? Or whatever. So I think it's important that we use some kind of high value, some kind of good reward out there, okay, when you go. By the way, this is another thing. Sniffing is not the enemy. Stop correcting sniffing. All right. Yes, I understand that maybe you have an on cue and an off cue, and your dog is only allowed to sniff at X period of time. That's fine. It's great. Just make sure that we're getting at least 60, 70 plus percent of sniffing happening on the walk. This is so important. Sniffing is proven to lower cortisol levels. It is proven to bring down stress. So when you use something like, I don't know, a gentle leader, and you are preventing the dog from sniffing and you're trying to do just a walk and that's it, that's all, now we're going into a territory where your dog starts to become overstimulated. In many ways. So you have to remember, you have to think about regulation as well. It's not just about physical and mental. All right. That I would say is quite important in that regard. The problem is not sniffing. The problem is when the dog thinks the entire walk belongs to them and you're just an Uber driver holding the leash. That's when it becomes a problem, right? Repeating cues. I find that this is a terrible habit to get into, like saying sit, 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 sit kind of thing. Say the cue once, wait, help if needed, lower difficulty if the dog can't respond, reward success. Repeating the cue louder is not training. It is just teaching the dog that the first 5 times don't count, right? So we want the dog to learn that the first time counts. So we don't want to be repeating nonstop. Um, let's talk about name recognition too. When it comes to name recognition outside, we want to be saying their name often. We usually start indoors. So anytime we say their name and they look up at us, let's reward that behavior. Because the better you do that inside with the closed in environment, and then you slowly make it a little bit more challenging, right? Then you'll have much more check ins, much more eye contact in general. Recall is another thing. Stop recalling the dog in the context of it's time to go in. Recall your dog for no reason. This is very, very important stuff. Okay. And like my last podcast, calm is a skill. Calm is not absence of behavior, calm is a trained skill. Dogs need to learn how to pause, how to disengage, how to settle, how to walk away, how to recover, how to process triggers. This applies to everything: puppies, reactive dogs, adolescent dogs, dogs that won't settle. Management matters too. For example, my recall sucks. When I'm even in my backyard, I try to do recalls. My dog doesn't come. So that means you start repeating yourself, and that means that you start shaking the bag of treats. And so this becomes more of a bribery than anything else, right? So it's important, for example, that we have some kind of long line, not to correct your dog, but a long line to wheel your dog into you when you're trying to work on proper recalls. Again, this is a phase where if you are yanking the leash, then chances are you're going way too far ahead of the system, right? It should be there just as a reminder that, like, hey, I need you over here, right? So that's why we use leashes, just like when we're on the walks. It's about getting attention. It's about being able to take a step back and having your dog focus on you. So, same thing with the recalls. Very, very important in that regard, right? All right. You know what? Let's do a simple homework. For the next 7 days, stop expecting perfect walks. Instead, do 5-minute outdoor training sessions. Let's practice name, get the response, sit, maybe a hand target, check in, calm watching, short recall on a long line, rewarding, disengagement, keep it easy. These are the things we want to try to do. Okay, so again, just to repeat, for the next 7 days, we're going to stop expecting perfect walks. Instead, do 5-minute outdoor training sessions. We're going to do name, get the response, reward. We're going to do sits. We're going to do hand targets, check ins, rewarding disengagement. Keep everything easy and just, we don't want the dog to have a meltdown. We don't want to overstimulate them. You don't want to do 45 minutes of this. All right. So 5 good minutes outside is better than 45-minute walk where your dog rehearses chaos the whole time. All right. So to close off, so if your dog listens at home but ignores you outside, stop assuming the dog is stubborn. Ask yourself, did I actually train the dog outside? Did I make the environment easy enough? Did I reward enough? Did I build the skill step by step? Because your dog doesn't need you to be louder. Your dog just needs you to be clearer. So if you're in Montreal, West Island, Laval, or surrounding areas, you're struggling with leash reactivity or puppy training, dog overstimulation, barking, lunging, canine education can help. I'm here for you. We are now going to have group classes in Laval as well, opening up the month of June. So if that's something that interests you, please reach out, DM me, drop a comment below if you have any questions, and we'll take it from there. Thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the podcast today, and let me know how things go. Thank you. Bye.